Hello everyone, my name is Adwait Patankar. I am part of the ESP Insights product development team. Today, I, along with my two colleagues, Vikram and Shubham, will run through what exactly is ESP Insights product and how it is beneficial in your firmware product development. Today in this presentation, we will take a look at the background of what led to the inception of Insights as a product. Then we'll take a look at what exactly is ESP Insights. Then we will deep dive into features and followed by a demo. And then what exactly we plan to do as additional features and what else is possible when you start using ESP Insights. Okay, however good or experienced he or she is a programmer, everyone faces a day in their life wherein the program that they have written does not execute as per the expectations. Now, if you have a developer environment at your perusal, you can actually add some debugging information and take a deep dive and analyze the issues. But when, especially in case of IoT firmware development, this is a tricky situation, right? You have lots of devices in fields, and you may not have direct access to the devices. Now, development is done apart from the testing, debugging, and whatever bug fixes that you eventually figure out is done in the development environment. But the conditions in the final deployment may vastly be different from the developer environment. And the same firmware which executes perfectly fine in the developer environment does not work that well. Now, visibility into these issues will help diagnose and fix issues and thereby improving the product quality significantly. To exactly solve this problem, this is where we have launched ESP Insights, and that will help the developers remotely take a peek into the execution environment and take a look at the issues and analyze them faster. Now let's take a look at what exactly is ESP Insights. ESP Insights is a device observability framework that allows developers to remotely peek into their firmware to get rich information about the firmware execution itself and analyze and pinpoint issues and bottlenecks, if any. Now, this will help launch the products faster, proactively fix issues, overall reduce the support cost, and also help observe and analyze device behavior patterns like the time of day when it is used, for how long it is used, and other external factors like the network strength or the power consumption, and so on and so forth. What can ESP Insights capture? So it can capture crashes, reboots, maybe intentional, unintentionals, and the reasons. You can also check error logs, warning logs, even custom event logs. Then you can have actually metrics, which gives better visualization of your device data and help analyze issues faster and in a better way rather than going through the logs themselves and scanning through a whole set of logs. Then there is also variables that gives information about the point in time system parameters. Now let's take a look at individual things, right? Okay, so let's take a look at crash reporting. Now, ESP IDF provides a facility to store code drums in the flash memory whenever a crash occurs. ESP Insights actually writes on top of it and helps on the subsequent reboot. The Insight agents reads the information and reports it to the ESP Insights cloud. The ESP Insights cloud then correlates the data with a pre-uploaded ELF file and provides a backtrace to find the exact line that caused the crash. Now, this is extremely helpful to the firmware developer, right? Then there is also information on unintended reports, like say the watchdog or the brownouts, and that can also be useful to diagnose other issues that don't cause a crash but can still cause a major failure. Let's take a look at crash reporting example. Okay, so this is exactly what a developer will see on their browser. This is very much similar to what they can see on a terminal, and you can see the register values, then actual backtrace and the line in the code which has resulted into the crash. This is a sample of the reboot logs, and it gives you exactly when the reboot has occurred and the reason of reboot as well. So you can actually check that if there was a watchdog that has resulted in the unintentional reboot. Then there is a way to actually correlate with the metrics and variable data as well from the very same page, and you can correlate data. Let's take a look at logging. So ESP IDF itself has a logging framework which can be used to diagnose issues locally and by observing the log prints on the serial terminal. Now, ESP Insights is a step further and it uses this framework to report errors, warnings, and logs to the cloud, and which can give similar diagnostics capabilities remotely to the developer sitting and watching those from their browser. Then you can also add custom logs that can be reported using what we call as events. Now, this is a sample of logs that are visible from the ESP Insights dashboard itself. Exactly when that log has appeared, what information, whatever you have put it in the event log or actual system logs, that is visible here. Then there is a timeline graph that also suggests about at what point of time, within a day or within a week, how many crashes have occurred or what events have occurred. So overall, it gives a good summary of how your system is behaving in the field. Then let's take a look at another important feature, which is the metrics and the variables. Okay, so as I said previously, that scanning through the whole set of logs sometimes becomes difficult to reach to a exact issue at hand. Metrics basically are the values of interest for which there is also a historical uh, patterns that are also, and you can actually what it provides trendings and timeline values as well. So it gives a good visualization of the system performance overall. Also, these metrics and variables can be grouped together and linked to create a hierarchy for better visualization. As I said, there is a set of predefined system metrics under the categories like the heap metrics or the Wi-Fi metrics that are supported by default by the ESP Insights firmware. But there is also, you can extend it further to have your own set of custom metrics and variables and plot it to check the performance of your overall system. We will do a deep dive through our demo session that Vikram will cover later. Here's a sample of the metrics. As I mentioned, it gives a good visualization over the timeline. In say last 24 hours, how your system has performed, how your heap metrics have performed, how your the Wi-Fi signal strength, and all those sort of things can be plotted here. This is a sample of the variable which actually talks about the system parameters, like IP address and IP network that you are connected to. These all are extremely helpful in actually debugging the issue and pinpointing to the particular issue at hand. Group analytics is another important feature that we have developed. Now, as I mentioned, if you already know a problematic node, it is very easier to go to that, reach to that node and take a look at the logs, the metrics, the variables for that particular node. If you're not aware of, say, thousands of nodes in the field and you are not sure which nodes are behaving unexpected crashes and that sort of stuff, then this is the feature that helps you reach to the nodes. It provides a set of extremely rich search filters wherein you can actually write a query and get a list of nodes that satisfy that search filters. Now, for example, you can actually say, list me all the devices that have crashed in last 2 weeks with the say program counter at say cafe 0042. Okay. And it will list all the nodes that satisfy this condition. And then individually you can go to the nodes, you can check the logs, the metrics, the variables, and reach to a pinpointed issue. Thus, the group analytics overall helps you get the snapshot of the overall health of your system and helps narrow down at the issues. This is the actual sample of the group analytics page. You can actually see the overall event stats. You can actually see a graphical representation of how many errors and sort of actually broken down into the categorization of errors. Then you have the timelines wherein you have how the system has performed within a week or a month at the time at hand. So you can actually select the time filters and apply those. And then the list of nodes are actually shown below, which satisfy the search criteria. Okay, now let's take a look at the demo. Over to Vikram.
Thank you, Adwait, for overall insights related discussion. Now let's dive into ESP Insights on and how easy it is to enable and use it into your project. So let's just jump straight into the code. So here you can see that this is my app main function. This is a typical function which IDF example has. And additional to your basic code, you can see that I have just done one and only one function call, that is ESP Insights init. Okay. Here you can see that I have also done timesync init. So this is used by Insights Cloud to actually plot the time series data. If you haven't done timesync, then the times used is nothing but a device uptime. And so using time sync is kind of exact or precise method to do that. And yeah, so it helps, but it's not mandatory. So your features which are really time sensitive, they would impact if you haven't done time sync. Okay. So you can see that in the config, you have two options. One is which log type to enable. You can or these bits to decide which of the features of the log you want to enable. So we have in ESP Insight traces. So it contains errors, warnings, and our own custom logs, which we call events. For example, if you remove these two bits, warning and event, you would see that only errors are getting reported to Insights Cloud. Okay, and Insight can, for now, use two kinds of transports. One is HTTPS method, and another one is MQTT. So if you are going with the Rainmaker, using ESP Insights bundle with the Rainmaker, then you don't need to take care of this, because you anyway are using MQTT broker. So for simplicity, let's use HTTPS as a transport, wherein you would also need auth key. This auth key you can obtain from ESP Insights dashboard. I will just share the screen and show you how you can obtain one. So this is my dashboard. I have logged into this thing, and under account settings, you get an option for manage auth keys. I have already generated one for myself. Then you can just click on the generate new auth key, download that, and embed into your firmware. Okay, that's how you get access to your own dashboard. Okay. Now, as we mentioned, that there is only one and only one line required to enable ESP Insights, that is ESP Insights init. Okay. Following remaining features we'll discuss later. These are not at all necessary at this point. Also, you would need to enable ESP Insights from the menu config, because by default we keep it disabled. So you just go to idf.py and do menu config. Under component config, you will be presented with two options related to ESP Insights. One is ESP Insights itself, so which you can enable, disable. You can enable debug prints. Then you can also enable core dump. So for which you would also need to add one extra partition into partition table named core dump. So the facility itself is ESP IDF's feature, and we on the subsequent reboot send that data to cloud. Okay, and under diagnostics we have some system metrics and variables predefined. Mainly Wi-Fi and HIP matrices are there. You can enable those from here. So once you enable ESP Insights and the features, and in the code you have also done ESP Insights in it, it's just you just need to do idf.5/monitor on your chipset. Okay. Okay, I have already done this, and I will just show on the dashboard how it actually looks like. From the logs, also I can see my node ID. So in this case, my node ID is 7CDF, which ends with E50. So I will just look for that. So yeah, this is the node ID. So I will just click on this and I will be presented with the Insight dashboard. And you can see all the features presented over here, which are just discussed by Adwait. Okay, so you can see here it's the overall graph of uh, time series events, warnings, and errors at particular times, how many are there and all. This is overall dashboard. And then you can see here that you have these errors and logs and warnings. Okay. At any point, you can click on the error or warning to expand that, and you can see at which line the error has occurred. Okay. So you can also notice that for some of the errors, there isn't detailed info. That is because we haven't uploaded latest binary for that. So that binary is that zip file is created by ESP Insights for us, which is created under build folder, and you can upload that under firmware section, which is present over here in under the firmware packages, and this will get resolved by itself. Okay. Okay, back to the code again. So this line I have just added for creating an error. I'm just trying to open some unknown NVS which doesn't partition NVS which doesn't exist with unknown name, and it will just push this error to our cloud. And let's look at the how we can add custom metrics. So apart from Wi-Fi metrics, heap metrics, we can also add our own custom metrics and variables. So we'll look into custom metrics. I have done this for temperature sensor, which I have for ESP32S3. So I just will go into what code I have written. I have just initialized temperature sensor, and then I'm registering this particular metrics with ESP Insights. Uh, so this function itself takes 5 parameters. Uh, there is so all the 5 parameters are of 4 of them are string type and one is enum, which dictates which kind of data I'm sending to the cloud. So first parameter is tag. So tag is the group under which all my matrices will be grouped on. Okay, this key is the unique key across all the matrices, and it should not collide with any other key. Otherwise, your other data will get overwritten. This is the details that will get printed onto your ESP Insights dashboard. This is the path. So path is used to showcase a tree-like structure, so you could have a better understanding of the data. And this is the temperature we are sending is of type float. So Insights dashboard can understand this float type, and it can then interpret it in that way. Okay. So done with the registering, then we will send actual data to the cloud with this function which I have written. So along with the system dump functions, I have also written temperature matrix dump function. Uh, so I will be uploading data after each 6 seconds. So under temperature matrix dump function, you can see that I'm reading temperature from the chip, and I'm just doing ESP DAG matrix add float with the key which I have used for this particular matrix. And that's all. You can see on the dashboard now that it is nicely populated. Okay, so Wi-Fi and heap matrices are already present. These are system metrics, and we have just enabled those via menu config. And this custom matrix is something we have added by ourselves. You can see that it is showing properly. This is chip temperature in Celsius, the details which we have added via our code. So you can enable, disable this particular this thing of course. So these blue lines represent reboots, and if there are any red lines, then those represent crashes. You can see here that the temperature is 49. After some time, it 48, and at some time it drops down to 43 and all. So you can use this to have wonders. Yeah, so similarly, you can also add variables. So code-wise, both are almost the similar things, same things, but only difference is that variables just keep only single snapshot of the data, and it is not time series data. So you can see here there are some system variables. You can add your own variables. So you can just see that how SSID or IPv4 are just not needed to have a time series data, but only the variables. Okay, so this is what we have currently under ESP Insights, and now handing over to Shubham for more detailed and futuristic points we will be having.
Thank you, Vikram, for the wonderful and informative demonstrations. My name is Shubham, and I'll be talking about the future roadmap and the plans that we are currently working on in Insights. So the additional features that we are currently working on are advanced analytical queries. So currently you would have seen queries running in the system. So you can execute and create different kinds of graphs and queries. So on top of that, we'll be supporting a richer set of those, and in future you'll be able to make more richer queries and get your work done more quicker. Another thing is command response that we are working on. It is to facilitate cloud to node communication. So currently, the node sends the logs to the clouds, and cloud has no way of controlling what kind of logs it requires, when it requires, how it requires. So command response will basically facilitate that process of cloud telling the node what it has to observe or send. Monitors and watches. So basically, we want to have a periodic automated monitoring setup in our Insights, so that the user does not have to check the dashboard more often. And on top of that, we will be delivering these anomaly results via alerts and notifications to our users. The user can choose between different kinds of notification platforms. So they can have a SMS or an email, or they can have the notifications delivered to their Slack channel, or so on and so forth. Next is webhook. So to deliver the enriched logs and matrices to the external systems, we have webhooks, so we can leverage that functionality. Another thing that we have is connectors for private clouds. So like Rainmaker. So currently we can have Rainmaker in private deployments in customers' environment or anywhere. We can actually acquire logs from those Rainmaker environments and then process those and enrich those logs in Insights Cloud, and then get the meaningful information out for the user. And last but not the least, the long-term storage. So currently we provide 1 year of storage for logs and matrices. So for some of you, it may not be enough. So on top of that, we'll be planning some long-term storage at some discounted storage price in Insights. So currently, ESP Insights is free to use. You can go to insights.espressif.com and check out the latest features and things that are available on Insights. And we will be excited to see how ESP Insights accelerates your product journey. Do keep us posted. Thank you.